manufacturing machine. This is a meat manufacturing machine. Both types of cattle have one thing in common. They require large quantities of grass and legumes in order to produce their milk and meat efficiently. Whether a farmer raises beef cattle by the hundreds on a western range or feeds a small dairy herd on a limited acreage, his success will be largely measured by the quality of the grasses and clovers he can provide for his animals. They're the cheapest, most economical crop he can grow as a livestock feed. This field of corn, grown for silage, will cost approximately $100 per acre to produce. This field of oats will cost about $50 per acre. But this field of grass and clover cut for silage will cost $40 per acre. And this field of pasture will cost only $20. This large outlay of machinery is required to grow grain, corn, and hay on the average mixed farm. But much less machinery will handle the crops on a grass farm. Grass pays one more large dividend to the farmer who will foster it. It conserves his land. Even quite steep slopes will keep much of their topsoil if they're covered with grass. But when the sod is plowed to grow grain or row crops, erosion may follow. Soil protected by a good sod crop is less subject to erosion and absorbs rain more quickly. Without its protective covering of grass, the land loses its topsoil in 100 rushing rivulets. And shortly after the deluge returns to its parched state as the surface moisture rapidly evaporates. And then there's the question of root residue. This field of corn will leave only 1,100 pounds of roots per acre in the ground after it's harvested. This field of potatoes will return only 350 pounds per acre to the soil. But a field of alfalfa, Timothy, or Kentucky blue like this will return 5,000 pounds of root fiber per acre to the soil. To get the most out of your grassland, it must be properly seeded, fertilized, and cared for like any other valuable crop. With a new seeding, it's usual to plant a companion crop, such as oats, to protect it from weed growth until it's established. This can later be fed as green forage or cut for grain as desired. The grass, clover, or alfalfa should be pure registered seed, and if one of the legumes, properly inoculated. Good seed is the starting point. To get a good catch, grass needs a fine, firm seed bed. A roller is a good idea in this respect. A good fertilizer, when seeding grasses and legumes, should be heavy in phosphorus and potash. For clay soils, 5-20-10 is good, but on sandy soils it would pay to use 5-20-20. It will take from 200 to 400 pounds per acre, depending on the fertility of the soil. In addition, where soils are acid, an application of 2 to 4 tons of ground limestone is often required to grow clovers. There are two ways to handle grass and legumes for winter fodder. The oldest and still the most widely used method is to make hay. Perhaps the most important point to observe in making top-quality hay is to know when to cut. The most nutritious hay is cut while the flowers are in early bloom or are still in the bud. Unfortunately, the vagaries of Canadian weather make it difficult to produce top-quality hay year after year. Cut hay that is subjected to alternate drenching and burning sunlight soon loses its nutrients as well as its palatability. A more certain way of putting up high-quality winter fodder is to cut and chop the grass while it is green and store it as silage. The handling of grass and legumes in this way is quicker and more convenient than making hay. Also, the high quality of the feed is much less dependent on weather conditions. To store grass silage, it is only necessary to erect 2 parallel wooden walls made of tongue and groove siding in a convenient location. A trench is not desirable as this would catch and hold water. Just erect the silo on top of the ground. Dumping and packing the cut grass is an easy job with an extra tractor. It's quite possible to put up 30 to 50 tons a day using this method. Packing to exclude air will prevent mold formation. When the silo is full, a good top layer of straw packed down will seal off the silo and further reduce spoilage. By using a self-feeding gate at one end of the silo, it's possible to feed cattle all winter without shoveling or hauling a forkful. Permanent pastures require some care if a farmer is to get the maximum feed from them. Once over with a chain harrow will break up the droppings and distribute them more evenly. An occasional application of a high phosphorus potash fertilizer at the rate of 200 to 300 pounds per acre will increase growth under continuous grazing. With this type of grazing, unless cattle are carefully managed, they will not graze a pasture uniformly, but will overgraze some parts and leave other parts untouched. One way of controlling this is to employ strip grazing. With 2 lengths of electric fence and easily inserted steel rods as poles, a farmer can allocate just the right amount of pasture each day. In this way, he'll be able to get up to 30% more feed from his existing pasture than by overall grazing. And the grazed pasture will recover more quickly. Another method of getting the most out of pasture land is to graze it mechanically. This makes constant use of the forage harvester, as the required amount of grass and legumes must be cut each day and hauled to the feeding lot, where it can be fed direct from the wagon or dumped into self-feeders. Some farmers who use this method claim that the cattle are more thrifty when they're not required to expend needless energy in grazing. But regardless of which method a livestock farmer employs in using his grasses and legumes, one fact remains constant. It is his most valuable crop. His economic well-being and the well-being of his land will reflect the care and nourishment he devotes to his grasslands.